if you'd like, Andrea, if you'd like to give a few words before.
I don't have I just kind of came to go to the meeting. I'm sorry.
Okay.
I'm Andrea Crooms. I'm the director of the Department of Environment. I'm super excited that there's 70 some people here who are interested in being a part of us working on implementing our climate plan. So that's really exciting. But that's all I've got. I just came to listen and learn, and that's all.
Oh, wonderful. Thank you. I also want to just establish a few housekeeping rules in advance. So we will be monitoring the chat. Should anyone have questions or comments during the presentation, please enter those comments in the chat. If you have questions, please raise your hand and we will address you after, or address your questions following the presentation. So my presentation will be probably about 20 minutes or so you won't have to wait too long as I walk through. Okay. So with that, I will ask Candace to please put up the presentation for me. All right, thank you so much, Candace. So again, welcome to the informational meeting for the Climate Resident Advisory Group. And my name is Dawn Hawkins Nixon. Again, I am the Associate Director for the Sustainability Division within the Department of the Environment. Next slide, please. So I want to start out with a little bit of background on the Climate Action Plan and to provide you with the status of that plan. In January of this year, the Department of the Environment, acting in the capacity of staff to the Climate Action Commission, delivered the Climate Action Commission's draft plan to the County Council for consideration. The County Council the Department of the Environment presented this plan or briefed the County Council on this plan in February of this year. And then our county executive issued an executive order on May 6th, directing all county agencies and county funded operations to support immediate action for climate solutions for Prince George's County. Following this executive order, the Prince George's County Council adopted the Climate Action Commission's Climate Action Plan by resolution on July 12th, 2022. So as it stands now, we have an adopted Climate Action Plan adopted by the County Council. Next slide, please. So what comes after the adoption of that plan? It's actually the implementation of the plan. That's where we really have the opportunity to start putting those actions in progress. Next slide, please. So what are the responsibilities of the Climate Implementation Task Force? By the county executive's executive order, a Climate Implementation Task Force was established. This task force is comprised of representatives of county agencies, the Prince George's County Public Schools, and I know I'm going to forget some individuals or organizations, and I apologize for that in advance. It will also include a representative of the Climate Resident Advisory Group. So those who are interested in becoming a member of that group please know that you will have representation, your group will have representation on this climate implementation task force. So the task force is charged with developing strategies and actions to achieve emissions and resilience goals, to also develop strategies and actions to prioritize climate solutions in county government operations, and to deliver, also charged with delivering a preliminary report to the county executive for consideration for inclusion in the fiscal year 2024 budget. And ultimately, this implementation task force will oversee the implementation plan for the county for the county in year 2023. Next plan, please. Next slide, please. And yes, so I'm sorry, I was trying to remember all of these members of the task force, but as you will see here, the task force will include representatives of various county agencies and authorities, as well as our Department of Planning, Parks and Rec, the Office of Management and Budget, and a couple of the newer members, and I say newer because these members were not represented on the Climate Action Commission, but they are indeed represented on the Climate Action Implementation Task Force. And those representatives will be the Prince George's County Municipal Association and FSC First. And also Office of Management and Budget, which was not included on the Climate Action Commission. Next slide, please. So what would be the primary tasks of the Climate Resident Advisory Group? You'll act as an advisor to the task force. How do you advise the Climate Implementation Task Force? You will have a representative as a member of that task force. You will have the opportunity to review proposed implementation policies and programs as presented by the task force and weigh in on those proposed policies and programs. You'll also have the opportunity to provide advice on the task force draft recommendations. You will have the opportunity and will be charged with electing a representative to serve on the task force. That representative of the Climate Resident Advisory Group will strictly be chosen by the Climate Resident Advisory Group. No other individuals will weigh in on who your representative will be. And also, you will have the opportunity to go out into your communities and help drive the actions, the recommendations of the task force. You'll have the opportunity to solicit information or concerns from your communities and elevate them up. Next slide, please. So who can serve on the CRA, the Climate Resident Advisory Group? Any resident of Prince George's County. You must be at least 16 years old. If you're under 18, we will need evidence of parental approval to participate. You must be willing and available to participate in the CRA meetings, which will occur at a minimum bi-monthly. And you must be willing to serve approximately 1-year term. So the terms will be that members are appointed for 1 year, ending December 31st, 2023. That date coincides with the sunset as established by the county resolution, which adopted the plan CR 32. The CRA group members may not send a delegate. We request that the group members, once established and accepted, are the only members, only individuals participating in that group. And any member wishing to resign or having to resign for any reason, we request that you make that resignation in writing to the group chair, who again will be elected by the CRA membership. And members who miss 3 consecutive meetings without notifying the chair, we will deem these individuals to have effectively resigned. Next slide, please. So we're looking for a diverse group of individuals to serve on the CRA or participate in the CRA group. We request that these members bring to the group any combination of understanding, skills, expert knowledge as related to climate action, emission reduction, adaptation planning, individuals who may not have experience relative to climatology or the like. We need to have you present as well to bring your knowledge and your experience and understanding of your community needs, your own needs, and concerns as related to climate change. We look for and welcome individuals who are knowledgeable of emission reduction techniques, approaches, climate resilience, and climate planning. And we also want to have a body that reflects the cultural and social diversity of our county's communities. And most of all, it's important that members really do champion actions to protect our communities and prepare our communities for the changes that we anticipate have already been set in motion by climate change, but to also, we're also looking for individuals who will champion those actions to help us take appropriate action to reduce emissions and advance in climate mitigation efforts. Next slide, please. So with regards to how the group will function, again, we anticipate that the group will meet at least bi-monthly, every 2 months. DOE support staff will help in setting meeting dates and sending out agendas and materials and the like. The meetings will be participatory, and of course, discussion and feedback will be encouraged. The virtual meetings will be held virtually and tentatively scheduled for Wednesday evenings, 6:30 to 8. We will have consultants on board, hopefully the next couple of months, that will help us attend the group meetings and provide support as required. But we really, really encourage the chair of this group to manage the group and to kind of lead and guide and provide the support that the group will need in order to fully function as not all the way independent, but a group that can kind of function on its own with little support from the staff. We don't want to interfere or influence the process that the group pretty much establishes for itself. So to the extent that the group and their chair can self-manage, I think we will be able to, or the group will be able to fully convey and present their interests and their recommendations upward towards the task, to the implementation task force. Next slide, please. So the task, again, for this group is to provide advice and peer review of implementation strategies, ensure that there's ongoing two-way information sharing and collaboration between the county and external parties, and also to help mobilize all sectors and communities towards our shared goal of carbon neutrality and resiliency and equitable actions. Next slide, please. So over the course of the next few months, and working and communicating with and through the implementation task force, you'll hear a lot about community resilience and infrastructure and residential resilience and green economic development. And these are kind of overarching themes for many of our climate actions, priority recommendations that appear in the climate action plan. So we realized that in order to achieve that climate resilient future, we must take actions that protect our communities and prepare our communities for the changes that have already been pretty much set in motion by our past actions as a society, county, state, and the like. And we also recognize the need to begin to prepare our communities and protect our communities and help our communities and residents to withstand the impacts of climate change. We also recognize the opportunity to develop a green economy as we put forth actions to reduce emissions and to help our communities to adapt to climate change. There will be need for various jobs that enable us to take advantage or to advance certain strategies for carbon emission reductions, be it in the transportation sector or in the energy sector. There will be opportunities, job opportunities to help us improve our natural environment or build up our natural environment to begin to maybe sequester more carbon through certain landscaping type of jobs, or even through restoration efforts, mitigation efforts. So as you advance through your service on the Climate Resident Advisory Group, you will hear these themes or elements of these themes resonated throughout a number of the strategies that are presented in the plan and will be perhaps presented by the task force. Next slide, please. So, of course, taking this directly from the Climate Action Plan, the climate, the Climate Action Plan. All of our actions are intended to present win-win solutions. As a county government, we want to lead by example and look forward to advancing recommendations of the plan that allow the government to reduce our emissions and to prepare ourselves for climate change. And equally important, we want to ensure that there are opportunities in every action to ensure inclusivity and equity, and through our implementation of various measures to reduce emissions and to prepare for a climate resilient future. Next slide, please. So, big picture goals. We need to foster climate leadership, ensure that public health is protected as we look at the various actions that can be taken to reduce emissions or improve climate resiliency. We want to focus on those recommendations that will give us the emissions reductions that we need, especially in those high emission sector areas, be in transportation and the energy sector. We want to ensure that we promote green business development, take advantage of that opportunity to advance a green economy. Again, we want to ensure that our residents will be able to withstand and recover from the severe events associated with climate change. And above all, we want to ensure that any action put forward is just and equitable in terms of who benefits from those actions. And every step of the way, we want to ensure that we engage the public, and the establishment of the Climate Resident Advisory Group is one way for us to engage the public and those actions or recommendations for implementation actions. Next slide, please. So the Climate Action Plan put forth 26 priority recommendations, and these 26 priority recommendations were grouped into 3 main areas: county operational areas, mitigation area, and adaptation area. And this the operational group of recommendations largely fall on county government in terms of implementation. So again, the county wants to lead by example, and the task force will be examining or reviewing these particular set of recommendations to determine best way for us to implement the actions, one or more of these actions as put forth, and how they want to develop a strategy towards the implementation of these actions. Next slide, please. The second group of priority recommendations are mitigation recommendations, and these mitigation recommendations are intended to help us achieve the emissions reduction goals as set forth in the Climate Action Plan. And there are 11 actions that will be reviewed by the implementation task force and be considered as part of their implementation strategy. Next slide. And the third group of priority recommendations is adaptation and resilience. We have 10 actions as presented in the Climate Action Plan, and the task force will review these particular actions and develop a recommendation as to the best strategy towards implementing these various recommendations in the plan. Next slide, please. All right, so I think that takes me to the end of the slideshow. So I guess with that, I can take questions, or Mary, do we have a set of questions already in the chat that I need to address, or are we ready to just take the questions from the floor?
Hi, Dawn. Yes, I think I started copying them down. I guess there's 2 questions, or actually 3 or 4. The first one, will a person be considered for the CRA if they're already on a county commission? That's one of the questions. I took a swing at it and said, as long as it's not a conflict of interest. But if you'd like to add anything to that.
Yeah, I think Mary's answer is correct. We don't have any restriction on residents participating in multiple commissions or groups or the like, as long as you're available to participate and fully participate in the Climate Resident Advisory Group. You're welcome to apply to participate, to be a member of that group, rather.
I saw that one and I sent it over to someone in the Office of Ethics to double check.
Oh,
so
sorry.
yes, because it's not 2 appointed commissions. This is not an actual appointment, like it won't go through the county council process. However, if you have an appointed position on a commission, and you do wind up joining the climate resident advisors, then you'll have to let that commission know that you're also on this commission. It'll become something that you need to include in your filings. That's all. So it's because it's not appointed, it doesn't follow the no tool appointments rule.
Thanks, Andrea.
One of the questions, can I address the question around
Sure.
recruitment and how we're gonna some folks said, obviously there's more than 50 people here. What are we going to do when we reach more than 50 people? And one thing is that we may not, in fact, get to 50 people right away. It's really important. And one of the lines that we put in that executive order was really around trying to reflect the county, trying to reflect our geographic diversity, the complexity of the different types of places that we all live, the difference of the different types of industries and businesses that are here, the age diversity, the gender diversity, the race diversity, the ethnicity diversity, the diversity in genders, everything that we can to try to represent so that every person can see someone from their community as a part of this. And so as we're going through and making selections, we may not be able, we may not in the first group of people we might be target populations that we haven't been able to reach, right? There may be communities that are underrepresented across the county. So we may not even be able to choose 50 people right away, because we're going to want to be able to recruit to make sure that we can find folks that are going to represent just that breadth of our community. And we want just the demographics to look like us. So that's kind of a challenging process. So it is I think that it's probably unlikely that we'll just right away have 50 folks. So we're going to have to kind of going through some rolling process to get folks onboarded and make sure, like I said, that we really feel that we've done that. We've made the yeoman's effort at that commitment to really try to represent the whole county. And we know that there are people in the county, and there are particularly, you know, there's been issues with the environmental movement as a whole being exclusionary. So we have to think all the more about whether people are currently feeling included where we are, or what we need to do to make sure that everyone feels that they're a part of this, and that people's, you know, choices and actions that they're already making that reflect their environmental values are respected, whether or not they are traditionally respected. And so we really want to make sure that that process is as inclusive as we want the output to be. So it's going to be a challenging process to make sure that we do that as folks are going through and applying. And we do anticipate, I mean, I can't promise, but I do anticipate that the executive order will be continued. One of the reasons to make it time to put a date on it was to put pressure to make sure that we get things done, that the county government is really thinking about how to do these things, but it can be extended. And so, the commission isn't, even though the initial part of the commission is for a year, I mean, I anticipate that this is something that will be ongoing. So we'll be able to, keep on bringing new folks in as we go.
Thanks, Andrea.
Dawn, we have some other questions.
Sure.
One that came up fairly early. Why only one representative from this resident advisory group? On the original CAC, there were at least 2 or 3, if not more, members of the public represented. That came from Laura Rosenthal.
Yeah, so the executive order established the resident advisory group for environmental justice and climate action. And as part of that, as part of that executive order, a representative of that group would be selected to serve on the task force. So you're right. When the Climate Action Commission was established, it provided for representatives of the public, representatives from the public, but these representatives were chosen, I guess, or recommended by certain individuals within our government structure. So I can only propose that this particular representative will be elected by their peers to serve on the task force. And I just think that that opportunity for a independent body to recommend their representative speaks volumes to me. But you're right, your number will be less than the number of representatives from environmental groups or the public that served on the Climate Action Commission. And I don't know if
I can
anyone
expand on
else
that a
wants
little
to.
bit also, Don, because I mean, I wrote the executive order. So the idea really was that this is about implementation, which means the people who need to act are those of us who are in charge of agencies, right? We need to put forward budgets to recommend to the county executive how we're going to get this work done. And so the vision for the climate implementation group is, it's not about talking about what we need to do, it's about doing it. And so the majority of the group is the people who have to do it. And what I sent to that group the other day about what our initial convenings are. So the internal folks, all of the county agency leadership, which is, I think there's 13 of the 19 are specifically county agencies that report to the county executive. Then there's a few that are the quasi agencies that are also report to the county executive, but are a little bit more complicated in the way they're governed. And then we've got the external parts and the community, the external bodies that are part of it and the community. And the idea, we set up meetings for the folks that are internal to introduce them to concepts of environmental justice and equity so that everybody's on the same page, and introduce them to the climate plan so that everybody's on the same page, so that we can, and in the letter that I wrote to them about what we were doing and how we were going, I tried to help them understand that the idea here is not for us to replace the priorities of these agencies with climate priorities. The idea is to look at their priorities through a lens of climate inequity. And so the goal of this group is to figure out how we can both meet the mission goals of these agencies and find space in their mission to make choices that are going to further our climate interests, you know, and going to protect our community from an adaptation and mitigation standpoint, and are going to be equitable in light of the people in our communities who have been the most burdened historically and presently, and unfortunately, to some extent, probably in the future, unless and until we control everything, or unless and until we always make the right choices, so that we can make those better choices, right? And so we want to provide them with the tools, and then we want to talk about implementation from a standpoint of, okay, people who are on this commission, the housing, you know, folks who work in housing are on this commission. So how do we make housing decisions for the county that also, you know, reflect equity, and also reflect climate priorities? How do we make public safety choices for the community that reflect climate needs and reflect equity? And so the design is to get those implementers, the people who are putting the pencil to the paper to create the budgets, the people who are looking at the, you know, the CIP projects and the actions across the government, to get them to really understand this and to be a part of something, so that becomes a part of essentially the fabric of the government as we move forward. And so this has a significantly different role than when we were asking the community to come together and create what is it we need to do. Well, now we know what we need to do. We've put a lot of effort into that. We can still evolve on that, certainly, and refine it. And as we learn more, and as we become more inclusive and have more opportunity for more folks who have been disenfranchised to be part of the conversation, that may evolve. But the primary goal is to take these recommendations that have been made, figure out how do we get them done. And that is why, you know, we want to have resident representation, but do remember that beyond resident representation on this task force, is, you know, is the fact that these are public meetings, right? So the task force is public meetings, and many of the commitments within the climate plan are about accountability and making it so that the public knows what we're doing. I'm sure that many of you have heard me speak about the fact that nothing gets done unless there's people outside my door with pitchforks and torches. And you all have that opportunity to lead your communities to be those people outside with pitchforks and torches, saying, this is important to me. This is, you know, I want my community to move in this direction, and I want them to do it in a way that respects my community and is inclusive of my community and doesn't disenfranchise people. So.
Dawn, we had a couple more questions. Let's see. From Janet Gingle. In addition to the meetings, what time commitment will this position entail? Will there be reading, writing, or community meetings and or additional responsibilities?
Okay, thank you, Dr. Gingle, for your question. Certainly, again, the Climate Resident Advisory Group will be led by a chair. They will elect their chair to represent them on the task force, but also that chair can guide and take the recommendations of their membership to do more than just meet and provide advice and review the recommendation plans. If there is a need or desire of the group to engage with the communities in community meetings, I think that the chair could bring that forward as a recommendation for further approval and concurrence by either DOE or the task force. Andrea or Mary, any other comment on that answer?
I would just say as a residence, this is your chance really to take it as far as you want. I mean, there's so much work that has to be done. I don't think there's limitations. Do you, Dawn?
I don't think so.
I mean,
Of course, we as staff to the task force, we would like to be notified in advance of any type of proposed engagement activities with communities. But I think as a group, I think that you have the opportunity to do that.
Dawn, there were a couple more questions. Let's see. This is one that maybe Andrea may want to answer. This is from Mr. Apkasif, I believe that's it. If the Prince George's County Council passes CB 92, what limitations, if any, does that present in developing the climate action implementation plan?
I'm not allowed to comment on current pending legislation in this meeting. I apologize. I can't talk about that today.
I should have known better. Andrea, didn't mean to.
It's okay.
So sorry.
It's all right.
Okay, here's another one from Tanera. How will the Prince George's County Implementation Task Force work with other county task force?
I'll take this one, and I can I was starting to write a response to Mr. Johnson as well. It's all about the stakeholders, right? Yes, I had to figure out how to make a task force that was small enough that it could get things done, but big enough that it had the right people at the table. So the goal is not for it to be, government driven. I think that task force in and of itself we'll have to figure out, okay, well, how are we going to bring the right stakeholders to the table? To me, having all the government representatives is not just about having, the 20 people who are sitting at the table, but about having all their stakeholder groups, right? I shouted in the streets before, climate justice is housing justice, right? And there's plenty of stakeholders, and climate justice is health justice, and all of those things. So we know that there's stakeholders that we need to engage in this process. So although the task force is in of itself a government body that is tasked with figuring out how the government does a lot of the work, because that's within our sphere of control, there certainly is a need to engage all of the stakeholders. And I've looked to some of the really great work done by some other task forces lately, both here and in other places, and so has the team. So certainly, for example, like that, we're seeing the Housing for All task force. I think that was really well run in terms of how it's engaged stakeholders. Could it be better? Can always be better. But I thought it was a pretty great task force, and I think it's great to work with them. We have our own advisory bodies, and we want those to be a part of it. We have the Solid Waste Advisory Council, for example, who are really digging in on the zero waste. Zero waste is one of the big goals within the climate action plan. So inclusivity is a goal, but it's always that like push and pull of creating something that is manageable and has like a central body, but also knowing that we need to have those kind of like tentacles of the great octopus reaching in every direction to try to pull in as much information and include as many folks as possible. I also saw a comment earlier about the fact that, many of the communities, we're going to wind up with underrepresented communities because those communities are disenfranchised. And so that's like another thing, as we figure out how to build relationships with stakeholder groups that can help us build trust in those communities and find value and figure out how we attract folks to having interest in this, but also how we help them find time for it, how we help them, afford to be a part of this group, all of those things. So yeah, I think that it's going to be a process that we're going to learn as we go through. But it's really exciting to know that the county executive has issued something that states that she wishes to listen to all of us in terms of advising how we spend the resources that are within our sphere of control, both economically and politically.
Dawn, here's another question, which I think speaks to specifically about the membership. It's from Mark Emlake. Can we make sure a member representative of NGOs join us? For example, Anacostia Watershed Society, the Corridors Working Group by Luce Chesick, Friends of Sligo Creek, etc.
So we did include organizations in our eligibility. I don't know if that made it to the slide, but resident businesses, organizations in the county are eligible to participate in the CRA. Of course, you'll have to demonstrate that you are representing an organization that is based or located in Prince George's County. So, yeah, I think the organizations will also be considered, but I do want to remind all that, again, we're tasked with ensuring that this membership reflects the diversity of the county. So understand that maybe everyone who applies might not be selected as we work towards that end, but we encourage everyone who has an interest to apply to become members of the Climate Resident Advisory Group.
Dawn, there's another question. It's from Wallace Johnson. Will the Maryland Public Service Commission be a collaborative partner seeking solutions?
Maryland Public Service Commission. Will they be, I'm sorry, can you
It's a political organization. I can't comment on that one either.
Oh.
I mean, it's a governmental organization, but it's also an appointee organization. It's complicated. Obviously, we want to work with every stakeholder who we possibly can, and the Maryland Public Service Commission is an important stakeholder in us making progress in terms of decarbonizing the grid, right? We'll leave it at
that. There's another question. It's kind of a I think it's in the weeds, but it's worth mentioning so we can make clear that we really want people that are interested. If someone is on work travel, but notification is made in advance, does this work against attendance record of the person? Because we do have in there, if you start missing meetings, you won't be in that. Dawn, do you want to answer that?
Yeah, I think we make allowance for persons notifying the chair that they will be absent from a meeting. I think that's fine. It's when members are absent from consecutive meetings or a number of meetings without any notification to the group chair that we consider that, begin to consider that member effectively has resigned. They're not going to participate, but there is opportunity built into that membership requirement for absences when there's notice given to the chair in advance.
Dawn, there's another question. It comes from, can't read it, Ketley, that's who. Why not have designated associates? I'm assuming that we have said that if you cannot have a delegate to serve on the resident advisory group, you personally have to do that. Would you like to answer that, Dawn?
And what was the question again?
Why not have a designated associates? In other words, we say that
a delegate.
Serve,
okay.
Yeah, a delegated authority.
I mean, I don't know. I think it's easier to have a body where the membership is somewhat established in routine. If, again, someone cannot be present for a meeting, that's understandable. And I think that they could ensure that the chair is aware that they will not be present. But I think we're trying to work towards a group that is an established group where the individuals are familiar with each other. And I think when we introduce these delegates, it kind of disrupts that cohesiveness. And I hope I kind of answered that question. If I didn't, please let me know. And I can try it again.
All right, Don, here's another one from Wallace Johnson. Is there presently one human message on the climate issue that can be voiced to everyday residents to get their buy-in?
Yeah, that's a big ask. And that's something that we are really working towards developing as a team, especially in my shop. But I think in essence, I think all actions are needed, be them big or small, to help us achieve that resilient future and to reduce our emissions. I think that we often, in general, people believe that you need to make huge, expensive investments and reducing emissions and preparing our communities to adapt to climate change. And yes, those type of actions are needed, but those small actions are needed as well, right? So, I think back to a couple of individuals that I've met over the course of the past year who are, let's say, master gardeners. They're investing in these small community gardens. I've met landscapers who are making a conscientious effort to plant native plants in their, or include native plants in their landscape designs. It's those type of actions that, maybe individuals don't really understand how landscaping techniques, agricultural techniques, and something as simple as reducing the amount of energy that you use in your home through energy efficiency measures really do have a huge impact on our future in terms of emissions levels, in terms of sequestration opportunities. So I think an effective, a simple message to communities and to residents at any level is no action is too small, right? So everyone can be a part of this climate implementation effort.
Okay, Dawn, there's a couple more questions. And this is from Woody Woodruff. Is there a plan to work with our other counterpart groups and other counties with similar climate plans? This would be handy when working with statewide entities.
So, yeah, Andrea might want to chime in on this one, but we do work with a climate group, state level climate group, in terms of evaluating policy that could be put in place to help us achieve our climate goals as a state and as a region. So the coordination across different county governments is already taking place.
Yeah, and that's an interesting thought that I hadn't thought of, but one of the reasons why we have a group like this is whether we could bring the groups of citizenry who've worked to build those plans together, we have all these virtual forums that I think that would be quite feasible because we already have those kind of connections with other governments that are doing it. So, potentially if that becomes something that the group is interested in connecting to other places that have done similar things, like, Montgomery County just came out with some of their implementation actions. And then even other places where governments have been able to successfully do things that we haven't been able to do here, or are trying different things, and we want to understand how they're working, like the places that are doing resilience authorities. So I think that there's the opportunity to connect not only government to government, but resident to resident. But we have the right kind of beginning of a coalition, a light coalition across the state that I think will help that. And certainly, we've got all of the many groups like Sierra Club that has chapters in other places. We've got, we've got a very active environmental justice, an NAACP environmental justice group here. There's other counties that have that as well. We've got a lot of different interesting connections, universities that connect to each other that we can look to find folks to come speak to you if you're trying to figure something out and you want to hear other perspectives on it.
Andrea, there is a question you might be best suited to handle. It's from Natasha Yuda Gama. And she's wondering, is there a plan to work stipend in for those who can't afford to volunteer for the year, or are there accommodations for those with special needs for this resident advisory group?
Yeah, so the special needs ones is easy, right? So that one is one that not easy, but I mean, it's one that we've already thought about in a lot of other contexts. So that is something that we already have the tools in place to provide. I've thought about the other one, like I kind of raised it before, is that people that we're going to not be able to achieve the broad diversity that we want without being able to compensate people for their time who cannot afford to volunteer. I completely agree with that. I did not put it in the budget going into this year. I'm trying to figure that one out, but I do agree that we know that is a barrier to participation, and we've got to figure out how to solve that. I don't have a clear answer for that now, but I recognize the problem, and we're working through that.
I don't see, oh, here's one other question. I think, John, you could answer this. Is there any partnership with the schools to make the students aware that if they meet the age requirement, then they can be part of this group?
We do have partners in the Prince George's County Public Schools, and we can definitely share that application, and I'm pretty sure that we shared the announcement for this meeting with the Prince George's County Public Schools partners, so we can definitely push that information about the application on to our contact at the Prince George's County Public Schools.
Okay, Don, here's another question. And this question is from Khalil. I'm sorry if I butcher your name, Shahid. In my experience, these types of groups tend to be dominated by homeowners. How can we ensure inclusion of voices from renters as we consider diversity questions? I would also add organized labor to that list.
So we are opening the applications up to, or opening eligibility up to residents. You don't have to be a homeowner. We understand and recognize that some residents are renters. So as a resident, yeah, you're more than welcome. We encourage you to apply to become a member of the group. I don't recall the other part of the question, Mary.
I guess let me repeat it. In my experience, these types of groups tend to be dominated by homeowners. How can we ensure inclusive of voices from renters as we consider diversity questions? And I would also add organized labor to that list.
Yeah, organized labor is a tough one. So what I would say, we do open the applications up to organizations located in the county. So if the organization is located in the county, we will welcome an application from that organization with the understanding that one member designated member will represent that organization.
Thus far, Dawn, that's all the questions that have rolled up. Just want to remind everybody that the application will be live tomorrow on our website. Here's another question. Um,
And I think I saw someone with their hand raised, but maybe we answered their question. I don't.
This is from Joseph Thompson.
Mhm.
The focus on implementation is blessed with good timing. The climate action plan was completed before the passage of the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act and the Inflation Reduction Act. Do you view the CRA group as an avenue to build some connections with federal agencies charged with distributing these funds? Well, I bet Andrea is going to jump in.
Yeah, I think Andre's going to weigh in on that one.
Yes. Okay. So generally when agencies get support letters for, going after money, they get them from organizations, they get them from, fellow governments, they get them from their congressional delegation. But I think the value of having residents say, look, we need this money because of this thing in our community that's driven by our community that we chose to put into the climate plan and then we chose as a priority for implementation, is really valuable. And I think that yes, absolutely. If you want to connect me to these people and so I can talk to them and tell them to give us money, sure. We are working really hard on charting all of that out. And certainly we could devote one of these sessions to talking to you about like what it looks like and, where is the money? And that's going to be part. So in the implementation discussion, the elephant in the room is that this costs money, right? Like if it was free, everyone would be doing it. Well, maybe not, but probably, at least it would be a lot easier, right? The reality is there's a lot of priorities and there's only so much money, but the government is waving money around for a lot of the things that we want to do. And so part of that conversation and part of the reason of bringing all of these leaders to the table, and something that I've been pushing a lot, and we actually have a infrastructure investment, working group within the county government. We even have, hired teams of experts to help us with that. We are building our infrastructure for the purposes of bringing in grants and managing those grants. We're identifying solutions to, workforce challenges that would be a barrier to actually spending money that we could bring in. We're looking at, there's so many things that are around this IIJA. There's so many things that it enables. And then the IRA as well. The IRA not only encourages us to, one of the gentlemen raised before about the right stakeholders, it not only gives the value of like working with the stakeholders who can make money off of this, right? Because the IRA has the tax incentives and other opportunities to, to bring things forward. It has a lot of money put towards workforce development. Somebody brought up, unions and organized labor, huge opportunities there to build the relationship with organized labor, to build our organized labor workforce, to create pathways, for folks to have a good paying job in the new green economy that doesn't require a 4-year degree, but can be earned through an apprenticeship, right? There's so many opportunities that come out of the IIJA and the IRA. I often tell folks that actually the day the IRA passed, I got my climate tattoo on my arm because I believe that we might actually do something about climate change. Like I do truly believe that at this point, which is amazing. So yes, a big part of the reason why implementation has to happen and why I pushed for it to happen so fast is that we have to get those federal dollars. We cannot do this just on the backs of our residential taxpayers. We are fortunate in our economic standing, but we are also challenged, right? We have many, many people who need and deserve the support of government. We have many, many things that we want to make better for all of our residents, regardless of their, economic status. We have challenges around equity. We have, challenges around equality. We have challenges around so many things, right? But this is, essentially money falling from the sky in a way that it hasn't fallen from the sky in at least over 10 years since the Stimulus Act, right? And in many ways has the opportunity to make the right investments to make that money go further. So yes, we have got to do that. That is a large part of why we're here, is to get that money so that we can do a lot of this work. And I saw a comment also about saving space. And that was exactly what I was trying to explain in terms of like the process of bringing people in, is that we anticipate, who knows, we may get a perfect cross-section of the county in the initial applications. I think that's extremely unlikely. There are going to be people who are challenged by disenfranchisement, by lack of access to broadband, for God's sake, right? To be able to even have a public meeting. Do not forget that you have neighbors in your own county that do not have access to what they would need to be on a Zoom call, right? We may have folks who, there's economic challenges. We may have folks who aren't aware that we're able to provide, what they need to access these meetings in terms of disability assistance, all of those things. So it is very unlikely that we are going to find 50 people that are a perfect cross-section of the county right away. So there will be slots reserved to solve that. And then we'll have to develop how we're going to solve that, right? Like, what are the barriers and how do we break them down so that we have real representation in this body? And we're going to learn together on that, and we're going to screw it up, but we're going to try, and we're going to do better and learn from what other organizations are doing, and try really, really hard to have a real cross-section of everyone, whatever that takes and whatever we have to learn together to do that.
Okay, another question. What is the outreach plan for involving the county church community?
Sorry about the background noise. So, yeah, we will have to develop that outreach plan. We do have a member on our staff who I can't remember what Rodney does, but he's a special assistant to the director, and we do communicate with him some of our initiatives within our particular division. And of course, this climate action implementation plan is one of the initiatives within the sustainability division. And as Mr. Taylor goes out and participates in community meetings, some of which involve meetings with our faith-based organizations, this initiative will be built into his agenda in terms of the type of projects and programs and services and initiatives that are underway in the Department of the Environment. So I do have a meeting with him this Friday to brief him on or update him on those initiatives within our particular division, which will include this climate action implementation plan.
And I'll also share it. I've got some folks who I've worked with before on interfaith power and light that have been really helpful in spreading that message. And yeah, so Rodney is a faith-based, or is whatever engagement something. I always forget what his title is as well, Don. Like director of community special assistant for community engagement, something like that. But in addition, the county actually has a faith-based liaison that Rodney has, Mr. Taylor has been in contact with. And we've done a couple of kind of cool things at a couple of churches. So if you would like the Department of Environment to come make a presentation to your faith community, I'm so down for that. I can quote the Bible as well as just about anyone, because I went to Catholic school for my entire life, and I am very comfortable with talking about that. I'm comfortable quoting the Quran. I'm comfortable with quoting the Torah and having an in-depth conversation about how faith beliefs can fit in well with this work, and the other overall work of so many churches that are really about the work in the community, the work around the world, can fit very well with these ideas and help people understand what they are. One of the biggest things that I think that I learned from members of faith communities when I go out and talk to them about climate is that they knew it was an issue. They want to help people, but they're intimidated by it, and it's big and scary. And so that becomes a wonderful thing to work through with someone who they already trust, who is in terms of a faith leader. And there have been some really great faith leaders who I've gotten to meet who are willing to do that. And so I'm so down. We will come out to come out to your faith community and talk to you. Absolutely.
I don't see any more messages, Dawn. If there's, we allotted a certain amount of time for this meeting, but unless there's, we just did it for questions. So please ask any questions you might have, or Dawn, or you want to say anything else, or?
I think that I don't have any further questions or comments to make, but I do want to remind everyone that the applications will be available tomorrow morning. I think Mary, on our website. Is that correct?
Yes, everything will be live tomorrow morning, or at some point tomorrow.
Okay, so please take the opportunity, a few minutes to download the application or complete the application online. And was there anyone with their question, with their hand up? I can't really see. I don't know. Yeah.
I don't see anybody with their hand up or any more questions.
I just have a quick question.
Sure.
Hi, I live in Suitland and in a community of half renters, half condo owners. And Andrea, was wondering if you do virtual meetings, or would you be willing? I know you talked about the faith community, but do you do other?
Oh, we do
groups?
community associations. I mean, I've gone to Girl Scout troops. I'll go to your backyard and talk to your neighbors. You name it. If you can get some people together that want to talk about, what they want to see in their community around the environment, we will get out there.
What's the best way to reach you?
I'll put my email in the chat.
Thank you.
Dawn and Andre, do you mind if I put a shout out for our urban tree grant program? Since we're looking for places in Prince George's County, specifically in equity areas as identified by the Maryland DNR equity map, to plant trees, 2 to 2.5 inch caliber trees. And our goal is to plant 2,000 trees in the next year. And these will be at no cost to the communities. So if you are in an HOA that, or if you just are interested, you may or may not fall within the targeted areas, although it's a pretty large swath of Prince George's County. Please feel free to reach out to me. I'll put my email address in there if you're interested in your community receiving trees. If you're in a municipality, anything like that.
Thank you, Mary. I think I see the hand up from Bill Orleans.
Thanks a lot.
Yeah.
I've had a question for several months that I've yet to pose to anybody with the county. In reading through the plan itself, long before it was adopted by council, I was struck by the fact that the appendices weren't included in what was in the plan that was given out. And I'm wondering if the appendices in hard copy are available. Would be the only way I would be able to read them in hard copy. If I were to call Ms. Williams at the Office of Sustainability, could I arrange to stop by and pick up a hard copy of the appendices?
So the appendices are available online. So have you seen them online, or are you?
I wouldn't be able to read them online.
Oh, I understand. I think in that case we can download copies. I don't know if we have any hard copies. I don't think we do we, Mary? I know we have the plan hard copy.
We don't have any of the appendix in hard copy, but Dawn, you
It's
just let
huge.
me know. And
Yeah, could you send it in an email and then we'll treat it like an MPIA request,
Mhm.
in which case we would be able to provide hard copies.
Well, I can
It'd be
try
an
and do that.
accommodation.
I did write down Candace Williams' phone number. My plan was to call and ask the question, and then I thought I would ask it now. But Uh,
I mean, we can
I'll
just,
try.
we can
I'll
take
try and
that,
write down
you don't,
every.
if you don't want to, if you don't, it would make it very easy for us to make sure that we did it, and we would just treat it as an accommodation and MPIA request. And that, because my concern is that what I don't want to do is to have to give out 1,000 copies of this, essentially an entire file box full of it. But I want to accommodate so that folks are able to access it if they can't access it in the online format. So I will make sure
I'm
that it's
ready.
available to you. But I'm
I
going to
will
treat it.
try. I'm writing
Yeah.
down now. Climate action at County PG, Maryland, US.
Yeah, we will make sure we get it to you. We want you to have
Thanks a
access
lot.
to it.
Thank you. Mr. Johnson.
Hi. First off, thank you very much for the job you've done tonight and the effort so far to try to get this issue put forward. My thing is simply, I'm almost begging to a certain extent for a very easy message that can be given out that gets people, the everyday person, to understand the issue. We keep getting bombarded in terms of climate change, all these type things, but when I'm talking to people and basically they want to know, so what's it mean to me? What's the, why should I, quote unquote, participate with you in this effort that you're doing? And that's why I kept asking anything about, is there any type of singular message, something that's been written that basically says, hey, folks, this is what we're dealing with, and this is what we need you to do about it. And this is what we're doing to help you with it. Just something.
Yeah, we tried.
Don, can I just try one thing?
Sure.
Just because the one thing that impacted me, I think more than anything else when we were going through the, when we did the briefing to council about why the climate was important, we had we had a young man who was 15 or 16 years old, who was one of our participants and one of our presenters. And having him explain to the council that when all of the impacts of climate change hit, he's going to be old and he's not going to be able to take, he's not going to be in the state that he is now, where he can run away from the storm, where he can pick up and move and start a new life, where he has, where he's in the prime of his income level and he's able to do those things. So the people who are being impacted are the people who are going to be around in the next generation, right? If you can look your child in the eyes and say, I don't care if your world is on fire when you're ready to retire, go for it. But I don't think most people can. And to me, I think that message really resonates, especially if you can get young people to express it, that they're afraid that they have no future if we don't do something now. And they're afraid of, the worsening events and what the lives of their parents will look like when they're old, right? Like, I think that it's really compelling for a 16-year-old to tell me that he's concerned that he's not going to be able to save his parents if there's, a huge hurricane and they're trapped in a storm and we don't have the infrastructure to protect their home. And they're also, I think, because of the community that we are as Prince Georgians, a 64% African-American community, where so many people built homes here because they were not able to build them somewhere else, where we are in this, first or at most second generation of multi-generational wealth. This self-interest really talks to people too, that this, there will not be any kind of equality in America if, at least where we are in the system that we have, if people don't have some wealth to start out with. And to me, unfortunately, I feel that most of the progress that we have made as a nation is because there is some now wealth in the hands of African Americans, and that there would not be the progress that we had without it. If you lose your house in America, you are losing your wealth. So if we lose the houses of our African American population that settled here and built something here for themselves and for their children, we will lose who we are as a county. And I don't know how we're going to get that back.
Sounds like you got the message. It just needs to get into the document and possibly on the upfront side of the document.
Yeah, I mean, we tried at the beginning to kind of put those 10 things to frame things around, but
didn't jump out, I can tell you that. That's why I guess my question.
Yeah, I mean, it's 100 and some page document, and it is hard to distill that down.
That's why they tell us the best thing to do is make your message very succinct, to the point that, hey, you could do it in an elevator if you had to, if you just had that time of a ride. But some kind of way That's what's going to help all of these that we're going to try to reach in the community. That's what's going to make it happen. That message is so succinct that it can be said just like you just said it. And people said, okay, what do I need to do then?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's also a lot of listening before we talk, right? If I need to
Yeah.
understand what a person cares about before I can tell them why it relates to what they care about. There's the old story in the environmental community that I don't know whether it's true or not, but I'm pretty darn sure it's true. Is that, you know, in the 1990s, one of the big green organizations realized that they were missing a huge sector of the world by not trying to target the African-American community as a philanthropic community. When dollar for dollar, it's the largest of people in the United States, the African-American community donates a larger percentage of their income dollar per dollar than any other community as defined by race. And so they determined that they wanted to try to get money from that community. And what they did was they went out into the community and they talked to people from school teachers to Oprah. And they were like, what resonates with you about environmentalism? And the story is that they showed two pictures, one of a child with an asthma inhaler and one of a polar bear starving on an iceberg. And
Right.
essentially, statistically, 100% of that community told them that they saw the child with the asthma inhaler as representing them and as representing people they knew, and it was something that was real to them. Bad environment causes child with asthma. I get it. Then that big green went back into their office and their board at that time of 5 white men and 2 white women, and decided they would send out a whole bunch of postcards with a starving polar bear on them, and then wondered why they didn't get, they just decided that African Americans weren't environmentalists because they didn't get a bunch of checks. And so I think that there is a really big important thing that is about listening before we talk and learning what it is that people care about and finding how this connects to them. And that's yet another goal of this implementation group, is to listen to those other directors about what they care about and figure out, again, I don't want to usurp their mission space. I do not want to replace what they are doing. I want to help them, and help myself, because I care the most about this of all the things. Find a way to find co-benefits and to build their mission in a way that we can support their goals and their core mission goals, but also climate goals. I don't think that any message works for everyone, but certainly willing to try to figure out what message works for the communities that you are in the space of, in the spaces that you are interacting with people in.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
I see the hand from Renee Bacchus.
Yes, ma'am. I just wanted to say thank you for what you're doing. There is a lot of work to be done, and a lot of times we wait for other people to do it. I am grateful that you took time getting these messages out, because I didn't get it directly. I actually got it from my husband, and I'm the tree hugger. So
Wonderful.
it's like, I need you to register. I think what it is for me is, the gentleman just said something about messaging. As a public health worker, the big thing that we need to remember is our messaging is us. Our messaging is who we talk to, who do we go to church with, who do we live next door to, where do we shop at, and those things resonate with people. As a proud Prince George's County master gardener and master composter, it's really, for me, about getting people to understand what they don't understand. My neighbors look and they say, you don't go outside and water your plants and all these things you put out. I didn't put it there to water it. I said, the premise is you compost. Compost does this, that, and the other. So it's literally about, now they have done some things differently in their yards.
Wonderful.
So it's about mirroring. And I think if we remember that, I so look forward to what this organization and the messaging is going to do. And I look forward to seeing Prince George's County change some of their current behaviors. Thank you for what you're doing. And however I can help, please let me know.
Thank you so much. Thank you. All right. Do I see Tanera?
Yeah, I just wanted to echo Teresa and just say thank you. And I've lived in Prince George's, on and off all my life, in Suitland, and I guess I've worked for an environmental organization. I did environmental PR before, like 5 or 6 years ago, and yet I understand, I'm committed, I'm a tree hugger, and it's not clear to me where to go to recycle. So I go to other parts of the county. I go to Alexandria to make sure that things are really recycled. And so we have recycling bins where I live, but then people put a greasy pizza box in the recycling. I know that all of that is going to go into the trash. And so it's really hard. And I am, been in this world. And so I wonder what it's like for the average person to understand what to do. And then there's conflicting messages about recycling is not really happening. And so, but I also think that there are everyday people who are trying to do their part to make a difference. And so there's this story of certain people don't and certain people do that you were, speaking to, Andrea. And so when it's sort of like, like you're doing it all wrong, or as people are dealing with so much, it's a hard thing. But I just want to say I appreciate the passion of all of you, the work that you're doing in the sustainability department, and we'll be reaching out to both of you, all of you.
Wonderful, thank you.
We
And
are
we're-
investing in a whole bunch of recycling education too, along with the
Yeah.
composting education, just FYI. That program.
That's awesome, because I
it-
contacted a recycling place and I was like, can I come in? They were like, no, the public can't come. And I'm like, well, where do you go? I went to another place. They were like, the guy's like, it's basically going to go into the landfill. Anyway, I don't want to take up the time
Yeah, but
about.
we'll talk about that. I would love to hear about that because it helps with like how we message. So I look forward
I'll
to connecting
I'll
on it.
email you. I'll email you.
Yeah, because it's things that I miss, right? Like we learned a ton by having this one forum on composting and then going out and talking to people about it, because like it was very interesting to me. We actually changed what we write on the side of the composting bins. They now say PGC compost instead of organics, because I would not have guessed that that implied to people to put poo in the container. But it makes perfect sense, right? Like it's organic. Why wouldn't I put my cat litter in there? Why wouldn't I put my dog bag in there? That's literally in a bag that says that it's compostable, right? Like totally makes sense. But like we learn things like that only by listening, right? And only by hearing from as many people as we possibly can, so that we can figure out, okay, I'm just too deep in it, and all of us are too deep in it. So we want to hear from everyone. Like, what is your experience? Tell me about your experience. I love to hear the experience of electric cars, because right now it's really hard to own an electric car. I own one, and so I do have my own angry experiences about it. But I love to hear like what's hard, what's easy, what's, what makes sense. Where would you charge? All these things. So yeah, I would love to connect and hear about your experiences and thoughts on things. And I want to do that with as many people as I possibly can.
Great, thank you.
Thank you. And Mr. Johnson, did you have another question?
Only from the standpoint, I know that Andrew could not talk about the politics of, certain areas of the government, but I did want to put a lot of emphasis on that Public Service Commission and the role that they play, because at any point in time that you're going to start looking at the dollars that an individual spends on energy, water, those type things, that's where the Public Service Commission impacts it in terms of their managing of rates. So if there's going to be any reduction through efforts done by the public, they're going to want to see the impact of it in terms of what they pay. So that's why I kind of brought that up.
Affordability is a core part of this, and trying to ignore affordability while moving towards, a cleaner grid, it's not acceptable, right? I mean, the Office of People's Council has this terrifying graph that like literally shows up in my dreams. I find it so terrifying about who will bear the burden of the investment in natural gas infrastructure, because those of us who can afford to will decarbonize first, right? it's just horrifying, right? So affordability is absolutely part of the question. If you want to see how I feel about the Public Service Commission, you can Google me. I had jobs before this and advocacy career before this. And I will talk to you till I'm blue in the face over a cup of coffee. Not going to do it on a recorded meeting.
Thank you.
And I think we're nearing the end of our Zoom session. Mary, any other questions that I can take in the next minute?
Not necessarily towards the advisory group. There was a question from an Amy Hart that maybe you or Andrea could answer. Will there be an initiative to reduce energy costs through solar panels? And I suppose that's at a county level, and that's the only other question I see on here.
If I could assist in that, I can tell you that already exists. The state put that type of a process in place to help communities and individuals that wanted to go into any type of solar efforts through allowing the utilities to be able to make that offer. So yes, it would be something that this committee should definitely be able to put forth as one of the initiatives that they would be able to talk to people about.
Yeah, and there still are some barriers despite that I would love to work through with, with the committee in terms of everything from trust in the folks who are going out and talking to people about solar panels to availability of the loans and the grants, access and knowledge of them. There's a whole bunch of barriers even where there are programs, and that's something that we're thinking about a lot. Like I said, there is no conversation about decarbonization without a conversation about affordability, or it's not available to everyone, right? And so yeah, absolutely would love to have this group dig in on that, and how we can community solar absolutely does need to be a part of that conversation, and community solar that serves everyone, right? So there's challenges even in community solar. So I think we have so much work to do together.
That's key, collective effort. Okay, well, I do want to take the time to thank everyone for coming out this evening and being so engaged in the discussion. We look forward to receiving your applications and reviewing those applications. Should you have any questions following this meeting, you can contact us at mypgc.us Climate Action Plan, or call Candace. I know she's loving hearing me say call Candace at 301-883-6211. So with that, I want to thank everyone and close out the meeting. So thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.